everybody, it's me again, Russ Shaw, coming at you from Seattle, Washington, with another dash cam session. That's right. How you doing? I'm great, thanks. Appreciate that. Anyway, forgive me. I got a little cold I'm coming down off of, and I had to wipe my nose. I apologize. Working on that. Still dealing with skepticism. This will be part 3 of skeptical. The word skeptical. Are you skeptical? Are you? What does that have to do with addiction? It has a lot to do with addiction because we solve certain emotional conflicts and stresses in our lives in a certain way, and we develop patterns over time, and sometimes being skeptical is just a habit, you know. It's a habit that keeps us from building convictions. That is the antonym, by the way, for the word skeptical or skepticism, is conviction. I used to work in a machine shop, excuse me, back in the day. I was a machinist, right, a machine operator, and we worked on these parts, critical aircraft parts, for Boeing and Sikorsky helicopter and Bell helicopter, and anyway, so we had these little metal parts that we made, and they had tolerances that were down to within the thousandths of an inch. You know, you had to keep this part that size, and there's this thing called statistical process control, and I took some classes in that, and because the company I work for sent me to these classes for free, and they didn't tend to lay people off that were, you know, taking classes, so I did that. And I learned about, it was fascinating to learn about how a cutting tool, when a cutting tool is cutting a piece of steel, that it will cut so many pieces before it starts to wear down, and the tolerance on that part changes, right? So you can do 100 parts, and then you need to change the tool, because you can look at the statistics on the graph and see how the consistency of what's going on, right? So if you want to keep a productive and, you know, a constant flow, all you have to do is change the tool at a certain point. You learn your process control. You learn how to not have a lot of scrap, you know. So I did that, and then I did get laid off because the economy took a dive, and so I got laid off. And I started doing sales. I got into the world of sales. Sales is a little different. Now, I have people tell me this. I first started delivering these little catalog things for this company called T Radio Network, and they did like radio advertising. And anyway, they put this little package together of free stuff, and I would, you know, I would deliver these packages, and then I upgraded into talking, you know, customers into trading, like, hey, if you give away 4,000 cheeseburgers, we'll give you some radio advertising time, that kind of thing. So, anyway, my point is, from being a machinist to doing sales, these were two very different worlds. In the sales field, you have a prospect, right? A person who is potentially may buy your product, and you can't just do everything the same and expect the same result. It doesn't work the same as machining. You're dealing with people, you're dealing with situations, you're dealing with different attitudes and wants and needs, and it's a totally different kind of an animal. Sales was very emotional, emotion-driven kind of business, and the world of machining is a very analytical type of business. The reason I tell you this is that when it comes to recovery, the reason there is so much relapse, the reason that there is so much focus on, you know, I mean, there's so many people that fail in addiction, and it's heartbreaking to see. Primarily, I believe that the reason is we are so focused on behavior modification that we don't go after the roots of why right? Why these behaviors come flowing out of us. We just try and stop the behavior. That doesn't work long term. There's one thing I do like that was in recovery that I scoffed at the time, and I didn't like it at the time. They would end these meetings. I was forced into recovery by the state of Washington when I was drank a lot. I was an alcoholic, basically, as a teenager. Drank myself to death at the age of 16. Got a number of got into trouble drinking. So the state of Washington decided that I needed to go into like a rehab kind of a thing. It wasn't I didn't have to stay there. I just had to go on Wednesday to a 12-step group. So I did that. And they would end with the serenity prayer, right? God, it was like, God grant me the wisdom, right? Grant me the ability to change the things that I can change, to accept the things that I can't change, right, and give them to you, right, and the wisdom to know the difference. I didn't used to like that prayer. I've grown since, but I thought it was just kind of a cheap way of you know, moving responsibility off of me. You will discipline yourself. You will have to go through a season of discipline, right? But the strength for doing that isn't going to come from you, and that's where the faith parts come in. You know, having enough faith to move on into the future is very important. There is a God, and that God is you, like I talked about in the last session. Your pride is not going to make you free from this thing. You're submitting your heart to Jesus, to a God who loves you, to, you know, not this religious set of rules, but again, Jesus is about human history, all right? Documented. I mean, it's 2012 for crying out loud. That's part of the impact that this man had on human history. More than just a good teacher, he's God in human flesh, right? I mean, this is the faith part. It's placing our faith in Christ and letting Him carry us in those times. That is that part of the serenity prayer. It's giving up our own pride, really. I mean, that's the truth of the matter. C.S. Lewis said something brilliant. He said, in order for you to be humble, in order for you to admit that you need to be humble, you also have to admit that you're proud, right? To admit that there is even a philosophical argument or psychological concept of humility, you have to admit that you're proud. You have to admit that you come up against pride in yourself. You think you can do it all. This is a huge part of recovery. Realizing that you're not God. There is a God. You're not Him. It's letting go of our own thinking we know everything, thinking we got all the answers. In those points where life gets really hard and the pressure and the fire is coming down on us. I mean, these are the times when relapse happens. These are the times that your addiction comes calling with that voice of, hey, I'll make you happy for an instant, right? These are the times you really need to cling to Jesus. These are the times you really need to call out to God and realize that, you know, it's just letting go. I love that scene in the Little Nemo where the fish is telling him, the other fish, just, you gotta let go. What's gonna happen? I don't know, but you gotta let go.